The old hearse mill. See how the wheels turning over there? It's built in 1738. This is on the old Mill Bridge Village Campground. Here's the back side of that old mill, watching that wheel turn. They got a little bit of water running off the top there. Again, this is that old Mill Village Campground in Ronks, PA. We got a nice little pond here to collect some of that water. And there's an old creek here.
And so I worked, and you know.
Is it an old auger or grinder?
I'll show you over here on the floor.
So everybody, we are in the Hearst Mill. It's built in 1738, as I mentioned in another video. The one that built it was the grandson of Bishop Hearst. His name was John Hearst, and he acquired land, over 1,100 acres of land, for patent, and he created the mill. And it was here in Ronks, Pennsylvania. And of course, water mills and everything, you know, they use them for saws, they use them for grinders, and they were made to work under water power. Oh wow, here's the meat. I gotta show you guys a second. Hold on one second. Check this out, guys. Look who I met up with. Steve Turtle. Work camper. Make sure you subscribe if you can. It'll be right up above there.
Thank you. And this is the whole history. I don't know if it goes through each sort of how the mill passed hands to different people who changed it and did different things with it.
Oh, nice. So guys, if you want to see the history, I'm going to do the best I can with this. Just pause it and you can take a read with it. That's awesome. Those are all railroad passes.
Yeah, yeah.
Pennsylvania Railroad. So what type of stuff did they used to bring in through here?
They primarily, it was all the grains. It was wheat, barley, corn, rye, and it was a grinding operation. But it was at one time a machine shop, a wood mill. So they've done a lot of different things in here. But this is sort of the setup, the grinding wheels. And the way it would work is they'd take the corn upstairs and then they'd
drop it down.
Take it off the cob and they'd drop down through a chute, go into this thing, and then it would go into between the two stones. Out down here, it would carry it that way and back upstairs to be bagged.
And that's the auger. That's another,
yeah, that's
another
one
auger
of those augers.
To move it along. That's really cool.
And then they controlled the corn, you know, here. And this is actually what they use to change the stones. Now the bed stone, the bottom one, turned. The top one did not.
Okay.
And I'll show you that downstairs. And they'd change out the top stone. I forget what they call it, but it says so on there. But the top stone, depending on what they were grinding, they had to change them because different stones cut it different. And there's actually like a real finite dimension that they try to achieve in order to grind different, mills.
The different size of the grill.
So
nice.
Pretty cool. And then back here, which it doesn't really have to do with a milling operation, but this is a broom maker. It would make these. you take the stick and the stuff, and then you put the twine on here, and then you wind it up and do all of that. Now, he used to have a guy that would sit and make brooms, and then they'd sell them for like 20 some odd dollars.
That was good quality work back then.
Yeah.
Today it's...
And he said, you know, if I could find a guy that would sit there and make brooms, I'd split the difference with him. And he said, that'd be cool. So there's a bunch of artifacts back there that he's going to place in and around the area. But his idea was he wanted to make an area where people could rent out a space.
And use it for marketing.
And then they could sell their wares. And, you know, these aren't really period appropriate, but I told him there'd be nice display cases if somebody wanted a display case.
Yeah, exactly.
To put their things in.
This is really nice.
But yeah, that's pretty much the milling process there.
So everybody, so the wheel is on the outside with the water. So
Yes.
turn the augers from here and run the machinery.
So
that's pretty much right in front of us.
I'll show you downstairs.
Got to give me a second to get down the steps.
Okay, no, you're good. You're good. I know you got your leg. Okay, no rush.
And everybody who's watching, this is Steve Turtle. Again, make sure you subscribe to his page. He's been really good to me, and he's a good friend, and I got to meet him when I came to the Millbridge Village Campground.
Yeah. And see, these were the display cases they had upstairs, and you know, they're really not, they're just
Not
cases.
period.
And I said, you could do better than that. So all this stuff is going somewhere else. That's an old pump that he had down here to pump out water when he had floods. An old coal stove that I cleaned up and got ready, but we just never fired
Never
it
used
up.
it.
But if he needs to fire it up this winter, he can. Oh, I should have brought a light down here.
And there's the mechanics.
And this is the mechanic. So there's the wheel that's being turned. Now, it would have been more water than what's in there now.
Yeah,
It would have been more horsepower,
exactly.
and it would have turned either faster or whatever, and then it's geared, but it's busted. This beam's busted, but this whole shaft would turn, the whole thing. And these gears are made of wood.
Yeah, that's the old-fashioned
Pins.
stuff.
Yeah. And this is the main gear that drove, meshed up. This spindle meshed up with that. And it hung down here. And it drove the two.
The two
yeah.
crushers upstairs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And then I'm not completely sure what this was. But it drove different things like upstairs and downstairs.
You know what? That could, some of these things could have been a saw too. They might have
Yeah.
had a little saw thing down here.
But
That's a grinder of some sort there too.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure what all that is, but I just find it interesting.
So everybody, you're looking at 1600 and 1700 technology here. Everything was water back then. Look at this. Now, if this is anything like some of the colonial buildings, and I could be wrong, but I'll put it out there. Like some of the buildings in Valley Forge in the old colonial days, water came in and out of here.
I'm not completely sure of how they did it, but when we go outside, we'll talk about it. I think the water came through here at one time.
Yeah.
And drove a different apparatus than the water wheel, and I'll show it to you out there.
Okay.
From what I've read, is originally everybody had water wheels.
Yep.
But then they developed what they call a turbine, and it allowed them to get more horsepower out of it.
Okay.
And he has a turbine out there, and I think the turbine was under here somehow, tied to these, and then the water came through.
Because there's the opening over there, and you could see that one from the outside.
Yeah.
Back in the old colonial days, they built their water was irrigated all over the
Right.
place for agriculture.
Right.
But they ran the water. If you look at some of the foundations, you'll see two spots. There was a great one in General Varden's house. behind him was another old, the foundation's gone. All you can see is the square on the ground.
Yeah.
Well, there's an open end on the one corner and an open end on the other. And then one of their archaeologist volunteers that's there said that that's for, they ran water through there. And it did, one of the things it did is with the water going through there, it kept the basement at a steady 40-degree temperature around there, real cool.
Yeah.
So that's where they kept the stuff that they need to keep cool was down there in the water.
Okay.
So that may have, putting two together with that turbine you're talking about, that may very well be part of that turbine.
He had a little placard out there, but he knocked it over with his backhoe. But it showed how the head race came in and went through the mill. And then the tail race, instead of a pond, it was a tail race. So it went all the way through back to the creek.
Okay.
So the water just sort of diverted and went around. And then that water originally did the wheel, and then afterwards the
turbine. Nice.
And years ago, when they started to convert it to a different process, they took a lot of the.
This is just another shot of the upstairs. This is another part of the roof here, and there's some pulleys. We're back on the second floor now. You saw the whole gearing downstairs that runs all of this here. And that leads to the upstairs, and that's where the loft used to be, where they'd bring the corn and the grain and everything in, drop it off, and as it was said, it'd go down through the chute, they control it, and that's where it'd get crushed. Oh, I love history.
Yeah.
One of my favorite subjects.
And then we had a corn crib here, and he wanted me to take it out. I took it out and hadn't finished.